Hello fellow Gizmos, my name is Gizmo21 and welcome back to a brand new video. I'm starting this video off with a little story. One time, my Aunt Casey and I were talking when my family and I were at a restaurant, aka a rather public place. I talked to my aunt about this album called Pornography by The Cure, and she laughed and said that I probably shouldn't talk about that sort of thing in a public place, and that's fair. I mean, imagine no context, you walk by a table, hear someone talking about pornography. Yeah, you're going to probably assume there's some sort of fiend. But, first off, if you haven't listened to Pornography by The Cure, you're dead to me. Secondly, this is typically a pretty family-friendly channel, but not today, gentlemen. If you happen to be watching this out loud, you may want to turn the volume down, because, gentlemen, what we're dealing with isn't quite the norm.
It's a sexy psycho bitch.
And, well, you'll see what I mean here soon. 3. Have you ever heard the phrase sex sells? I'm not saying that's what Monolith did here, but, I mean, come on. They knew what they were doing. With all that being said, though, let's start the review for F.e.a.r 2. That rhymed. Comedy, I know. In F.e.a.r 2, you play as a man by the name of Michael Beckett, who is part of a Delta Force team codenamed Dark Signal. They're sent into Genevieve Aronsteed's penthouse to arrest her, which you may recognize her from the first game. As this happens though, ATC troops attack and everything kinda goes to shit after that. Genevieve starts to explain how the members of Dark Signal are important to stopping Alma, but as she does so, Point Man from the original F.e.a.r game detonates the reactors in the Origin facility. When you wake up, it's at this point when you get your reflex ability, and you learn why you're important to Genevieve and Alma. Basically, think of Genevieve as a wingman of sorts. She's trying to set you up on a nice/forced date with Alma, who is extremely attracted to you. And to keep things family-friendly, she wants to do a little more than just go for dinner, if you're catching my drift. Isn't Genevieve awesome? She's such a good gal for helping us out. I mean, really, could you name a better person than Genevieve? I mean, seriously, come on. I bet you can't. Anyway, that's just a super brief and purposely shitty rundown of the narrative. Trust me, if you want to learn more about it, I highly suggest you play the game for yourself, especially if you love yourself a good yandere sort of story. And as a proud member of r/yandere, r/yandere hentai, and r/lonely, I highly recommend, especially if you fit any of those categories.
Oh. Hi. Do I kill you? Oh, I can't kill you. Good to see you. Oh, wow. You have changed. Oh, damn. You have indeed changed. Oh, damn. You have changed. Alright. Alright. You can have me, Alma. God damn! You can have me. Holy shit.
In all seriousness, the narrative is mature and fucked up, and I absolutely love it. In F.e.a.r 2, the level design is a little bit different than that of the original F.e.a.r game. In F.e.a.r 1, it's perfectly possible to play the entire game just by busting into a room, slowing shit down, and fucking shit up. In F.e.a.r 2, however, there is some of that, but not nearly as much. Bizarrely enough, this is the same case I had with the original F.e.a.r DLCs, which were absolutely awful because the levels were designed in a similar way as F.e.a.r 2, but wasn't as optimized, and by optimized, I mean the combat in F.e.a.r 2 can actually compensate for cover-based shooting, whereas the original F.e.a.r just wasn't. The level design in F.e.a.r 2 sometimes promotes cover-based shooting, and so did those DLCs. But the combat for cover-based shooting in F.e.a.r 2 is a hell of a lot better, and actually sort of satisfying. Maybe someday I'll get into the DLCs of the original F.e.a.r, but I have no idea when because for whatever reason, OBS refuses to record them. And honestly, I can't blame it. There was this one part when you're riding on this tram and enemies are coming for your ass in damn near every direction. It was chaotic and kinda cool, but it made me sort of motion sick for some reason. This was one of the only parts of the game that I honestly could have done without. In the original F.e.a.r, the reflex ability felt like an absolute necessity. You're going to be using the reflex ability from start to finish. But in F.e.a.r 2, you really don't have to use it, if you don't want to. Remember how I said in the original F.e.a.r video that the combat is whatever you make of it? Well, with F.e.a.r 2, even more so. Sure, you can use the reflex ability, but now that you have the ability to aim down iron sights, you can also make F.e.a.r 2 into a cover-based shooter. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. But to me, I still like busting into a room, slowing shit down, and fucking shit up. And that aspect has not gotten any less satisfying. It's still just as satisfying as it was in the original game. Though they did kind of fuck up the shotgun, but I didn't use it all that much in my playthrough of F.e.a.r 2, so for me, it's not too big of a deal. But it varies depending on who you ask. Speaking of, for the most part, you've got the same arsenal of weapons from the original game, but they've been completely reskinned. Also, remember that leaning shit you did in the original F.e.a.r? Well, yeah, you're not going to be doing any of that anymore. I don't know why they took that shit out, especially since F.e.a.r 2 can be more cover-based than the original game, but it probably has something to do with it having consoles in mind during development. One thing I do miss about the original F.e.a.r that is absent in F.e.a.r 2 is when you would fight in the original game, you would fight entire squads at a time, but in F.e.a.r 2 it's just kind of hordes of enemies. Not only that, but the AI in general seems to be a little dumbed down. They also don't have much of the great dialogue that I absolutely loved in the original game. It was absolutely awesome to feel like you were feared in the original game, but F.e.a.r 2 doesn't really have that effect at all. If anything, you feel like the complete opposite of that, which in a bizarre way actually adds to F.e.a.r 2's spookiness. Which, speaking of, F.e.a.r 2 does have some genuinely good scares that will likely get first-time players. Unless, of course, you're like me, and you get scared from a game you've played a million times. There's also segments of the game when you're using this mech thing, essentially, and these parts are actually pretty damn cool. You've got guns and missiles, and it's just generally pretty awesome. F.e.a.r 2 gets a bad reputation amongst F.e.a.r fans, and honestly, I'm not really sure why. In my opinion, it adds to what was already great about the original game, and overall, I just love the game and highly recommend it. It also has a rather mature narrative that honestly is pretty damn good. It also has one of the most fucked up video game endings I think I've ever played, or really ever heard of. I think it might actually be better than the original F.e.a.r game, which I know is heresy to say, but I just loved it. The first game is absolutely awesome and something you should absolutely play, but throw this game in there too, because honestly, it's an underrated gem. With all of that being said, like, subscribe, comment, share with your pals, and help people become fellow Gizmos today. And let me know what you think of this game if you do happen to play it, or have already played it. And again, thank you guys so much for watching. Love you guys so much. Bye-bye.